How far can a year three Jaxson Dart go individually and as a team? We look at that. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Also did a little stint at WSMV in snowy Nashville, Tennessee. Today on the show, we tell you what a year three Jaxson Dart will look like, and a trip to New York is not out of the question this year for that young man. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers like Lane Kiffin, apparently, that make the show what it is. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs can help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, this is an interesting situation because roughly three times or two times before this, in the last 25 or so years, Ole Miss has had a third-year starting quarterback. I guess you could count that as three times if you count Romero Miller going into the 2020 type season. But we are going to look at two specific quarterbacks and what Jaxson Dart is going to make that jump in the expectations going into 2024. The two quarterbacks that everybody thinks of when this happens is you have a Matt Corral, which I understand that's not a year three same coach, Matt Corral, but Matt Corral was 3 years starter in the system, had all the weirdness of the COVID stuff. He was unbelievably good as a senior. I don't know exactly what the classification was, but you also have Eli Manning. And those are also three high-level quarterbacks that would have been considered top 50, top 100 type football players as well. If you look at Jaxson Dart's stats up into this point, year one to year and then year two, there's a lot of similarities between him and Eli Manning. And I understand that I'm comparing the young man to the GOAT right now. I get that. But I think this is important to know because the year three of Eli Manning ended up with Eli Manning winning the Maxwell and completely getting jobbed out of the Heisman Trophy. He was in New York. He did all of that stuff, but that was a year three quarterback under the same coach. At that time, David Cutcliffe was known as an offensive guru. You saw what happened under the Mannings with him, and the rest was history. I think you have a similar type jump that could happen with Jaxson Dart this season as well. These are three things that I'm going to be looking for this season. I want to see the numbers jump that looks similar to what the numbers jump was for Eli Manning at the end of this season. Jaxson Dart very well could hold every meaningful passing record with the exception of like one or two in Ole Miss history. If you go off past Ole Miss year three quarterbacks, there's a very high jump that goes from year two to year three. John Gillespie did an article at the Grove Report on that subject as well. I recommend you check that out. His competitive nature is almost Matt Corral on steroids, and we all know how competitive Matt Corral was in 2021. So much so he got hurt. I think Jaxson needs to be careful with that competitive instinct, figure out a way for it to bubble up, especially during the offseason, because right now with Jaxson Dart kind of taking over and taking the reins of this being his team, because he's going to go to media days. He is going to be the face of the program. This is going to be a large 12 months for Jaxson Dart. His competitive nature starts kind of right now when Ole Miss starts doing fourth quarter drills or county fair or whatever they call it. Whenever they start working out right now, him taking the lead, him doing what he needs to do is going to improve it pretty greatly. And the thing that is going to cause the jump to happen in year three for Jaxson Dart is more games like LSU, Texas A&M, and Penn State. He really had one of those games in 2022. He had three of them in 2023. He probably needs 6 or 7 of them in 2024. If that happens, Ole Miss has a chance to win 11, 12 football games somewhere in that ballpark, and every meaningful record. Jaxson Dart moves out of Ole Miss as the greatest of all time, and the speed limit is just unbelievably slow. It's like a below idling speed. You could have a speed limit 2 all over campus. That is the direction that we are going with Jaxson Dart. Now, if you look at what he did this year, is year 2 Jaxson Dart, he was 233 for 358, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He also ran the ball for about 400 yards. He was hurt the last 4 or 5 games of the season. That's the reason I was talking about Jaxson Dart needs to learn how to be careful and take care of himself. And if he does that and runs, he doesn't take unnecessary hits. He's an effective runner and all that, and he's somewhat healthy going through the season, this guy could end up in New York. This is a true bona fide Heisman candidate. If you look at the way too early Heisman list that they put out, Jaxson Dart is popping up on the top 10 and all of. Now, he's not popping up 2. He's popping up like 7. But just being on this list means 2 things. A lot of people that are going to vote for this award think that Ole Miss can win enough games that gets him in contention to begin with. And this season, with Ole Miss winning 10 games, would have probably been good enough to get him there to begin with. And he also thinks that Jaxson Dart is going to put up big numbers. You have that massive game against Penn State where he completely just worked the number 1 overall defense. And it's a situation to where I think Jaxson has a chance to take a major step. And all of that, if you take into account what this team can be, and we've done videos about national championship convention conversation, and talking about SEC championships and stuff like that, all these heady conversations, because there is no ceiling, no glass ceiling that Ole Miss can hit going into 2024. If Ole Miss is in contention for those things, Jaxson Dart is going to be in contention for a lot of these individual awards as well. Maxwell, the Johnny Unitas, the Heisman Trophy, all of those will be within reach. And it also helps Jaxson Dart not having Quinshon Judkins around. And I don't mean that in a negative situation towards Quinshon, just because he gets to be the face of the program and it's not split down the middle. Because some people, no matter what have happened, like last year, Quinshon would have gotten just as much credit as Jaxson Dart for what happened as the season went on, because they were both kind of co-heads of the team. Now, if you look at what could happen, we talked yesterday about potential coaching type stuff and all of that, but nothing is in the hopper that in any way will negatively affect this team. And we'll see exactly how that goes as well. I'm pretty fired up about what can happen and where we are as a program, seriously. Now, I do want to let you know that thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day, and we're just getting started. We are entering advantage season for Ole Miss, and rumored visits are flying. We'll tell you the latest one that has popped up as well. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make to take my business to the next level? LinkedIn knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn just isn't another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire on planet Earth. Honestly, just look at the math. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of all businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You know, we all talk about goals. And in this video, we talk about Jaxson Dart as a potential goal for a championship or the Heisman and that thing. Well, small businesses need to have goals as well. And achieving them in 2024 means that you have the right people working for you. And if you have the right team member, they can really ease that transition from good to great. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats. You might not have the time or resources to do this over and over and over again. So thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. So in the first segment, we talk about like what does a year 3 Jaxson Dart look like? And honestly, it probably parallels more of what Eli Manning went through in his career than even what Matt Corral did a little bit later on. And everybody's excited to see that. But the roster building is still going. And we are entering advantage season for Ole Miss football. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Ole Miss starts classes late. They're not going to start until Monday. And the drop ad date, the last day to get into classes, is sometime in early February. Why is that important? Why is that a big deal? Well, the negative of Ole Miss of not getting people, quote, locked in, although that doesn't really exist anymore, is going to be harder to keep them necessarily, as Ole Miss lost to Cameron Richardson after Hudson was let go, and they lost to Mary McDonald to the Louisville Cardinals as well. So everybody's freaking out about the late start time of Ole Miss. Well, here's the advantage, okay? Nick Saban retired. It looks like Jim Harbaugh is about to go to the pros. Washington's roster has entered their portal window. Arizona's as well. 4 teams in the top 15 in the portal window that is open right now. There is a very select few schools that have the ability to take advantage of that, but Ole Miss is one of them. And Ole Miss, with that drop ad date that ends essentially sometime in the first week in February, Ole Miss can use that to their advantage, and they will. Now, you have a situation today. Lane Kiffin, or yesterday, Lane Kiffin was in Dallas. Who was he in Dallas to see? There's rumors about Jabbar Muhammad. There's rumors about Kendrick Blackshear. We can't be sure exactly, but Ole Miss is still playing the game. When everybody else is doing it and the drop ads in some places are getting ready to come to an end, Ole Miss's window is just really opening up to where this weekend and next weekend are going to be interesting weekends that other places don't have. So understand that all of the stressing that everybody has done up until now, that can kind of go away. And we are entering Ole Miss advantage season to where Ole Miss can be one of the few schools on the hunt for some of these rosters like Alabama, Washington, Michigan, potentially, and Arizona that others cannot do. So one of the people that has popped up is Dezz Ricks, Desmond Ricks from IMG Academy in Florida. I think he was originally from the Chesapeake Bay area. Zach Blostein said that Alabama DB transfer Dezz Ricks tells me he's no longer visiting LSU this week. Oregon and Ole Miss are possible visit destinations after his trip to Texas A&M. So he's going to A&M. A&M obviously is going to be a difficult place to beat, but Pete Golding, Dezz Ricks, I think there could be a little bit of magic that happens right there. And when you're looking at players that are going to start popping into the windows, this is somebody you need to keep an eye on. Dezz Ricks has a chance to be that long, lengthy. He was a top 40, top 50 type prospect out of high school. He's a good player. He's a real good player. And I'm not 100% certain, but if he went to IMG, he may have been on the team that beat Bishop Sycamore. I would love to ask Dez that if he ends up at Ole Miss. But just to get an idea of what's going on, but a really, really good football player. And like I said, Ole Miss has commitments from Yam Banks and Right, from Virginia Tech. Forgot his name for a second. Sorry about that. And Ole Miss potentially is looking at a Morian Walker. And obviously, Ole Miss is still recruiting Kendrick Blackshear, who we're still waiting to see what happens. Classes began at Texas on Monday. So they're in the middle of it. He is now an expedited time on. Okay. Jabbar Muhammad is also in the portal. He is out of DeSoto, Texas. He's a transfer from the Washington Huskies. He started his career at Oklahoma State. Why did I mention that with Blackshear and Muhammad? Well, like I said, yesterday, Lane Kiffin was in Dallas, Texas. So odds are he was probably visiting one of those. And whenever you look at Dezz Ricks and whenever you look at Jabbar Muhammad, they're obviously playing in the cornerback waters as we speak. Kendrick Blackshear, I think they feel pretty good about that situation. And we'll see what else pops up. We talked about yesterday how Kelvin Bolden and Enrique Davis followed Jonah Coleman from Arizona. And we think that, interior offensive line or offensive line, running back, and cornerback are the three positions to watch in these last 3 weeks or these last 2 weeks for Ole Miss football. Really, really big time stuff. I'm pretty impressed about exactly what can happen. And I love this transfer portal. I hate that the transfer portal is not as predominant as it is. I know that coaches need the time off and all that, and a completely open free for all would be just impossible for coaches. I get all of that. But for me, I just enjoy following it. I enjoy doing the breadcrumbs. I enjoy doing the national treasure type stuff on a post. Who is following who? I love doing all of that. And I hate the fact that after the 1st of February, there's going to be a break until April 15th through 30th when it opens back up again. So I do want to caution everybody that looks at it and is like, okay, the roster's finalized. Let's worry about this, because it's always a work in progress. There's always going to be holes. There's not exactly what you want. And the roster doesn't even have to be in compliance, I don't think, until August. So let's all settle down, get the best group of athletes that we can on the field, and go win a national title come 2024 against that schedule. Get Jaxson Dart to New York on the Heisman stand. Maybe he can be shown around by Eli Manning. Maybe we can do that story to where Eli Manning and Jaxson Dart, they're sitting there going back and forth like the previous and the next generation at Ole Miss. I think that would be really cool to see. And it's honestly, with what's going on in the portal, with what's going on with Jaxson Dart, with everything that's surrounding Ole Miss football right now, there's really nowhere to go but up. I'm pretty fired up indeed about that. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ole Miss takes on LSU tonight with a chance to go 16-1. Do you need me to say that again? 16-1. We talk about what could be an important week for the Rebel Hoopsters this week. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet like him. You can go in there and do live same game parlays, like pick different things that are bettable inside a game to have it going on. I'm not the most creative in the world, so I'm looking at like the new Explore tab that they have to where you can find specific bets to make. And they have a parlay hub to where whenever, like I said, you're not creative like me, you can go in there and figure out what the popular parlays are in the FanDuel sphere, and you can place that bet as well. They have much, much more as well. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, But can we just talk a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary, scary stuff. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than Becky getting sick while supply chain issues kept them from getting life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and many, many others. This stuff could happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medication will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code Locked On to get $20 off your order. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. Now, changing gears a little bit from this football program, the transfer portal that everybody's interested in at the moment, but the basketball team tonight takes on the LSU Tigers. The Bayou Bengals will win over the LSU Tigers, and Ole Miss basketball could go to 16-1. Could you believe us talking about like game 3 whenever Ole Miss needed a buzzer beater from Sam Houston not to go in, saying that Ole Miss could end up 16-1, and their only loss was to a top 5 team in their building. Now they go for another road game down to the PMAC. They're going to take on the LSU Tigers, who is currently 2-1 as well in the Southeastern Conference. Kind of a surprise 2-1, if we're going to be honest. So they're playing a little bit better than they did last year when they finished dead last in the SEC. So their improvement is not quite up to where Ole Miss's is, but it still is there. So Ole Miss going there and not falling into the trap and figuring out a way to get the W. I don't care if it's by 1 point, by 2 points, by 3 points. I just don't care. What Ole Miss needs to do is get the W, because that would set up the next biggest game in Ole Miss basketball history. As Ole Miss is going to go into Neville Arena in Auburn, Alabama, to take on the Auburn Tigers on Saturday night at like 7:30 or something like that. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, one of the main players for Ole Miss this year, we talked about Matthew Morrell on a show earlier this week, but Alan Flanagan needs to get his due as well. He's currently averaging 16.3 points a game, 6.9 rebounds a game, and 3.6 assists per game. He's been lauded as one of the best transfers of all teams going in, and Alan Flanagan has played like, honestly, if you think about it, if you're my age, if anybody can remember what it looked like, and granted, Ansu Cisse was a little bit bigger player, okay? But him being left-handed and how easy it looks from time to time and how smooth he is, there's a lot of Ansu to his game. Now, Alan Flanagan's only 6'6". I get that. But there's a smoothness to his game and an alpha nature of his game. Him and Juju are kind of the run stoppers on Ole Miss's team. If the other team goes on a run, it's going to be one or two of those that breaks up the run. And that is just the way it works out. Now, if you look at the game splits, and I realize there's only been 3 true road games in Ole Miss's schedule this year, Alan Flanagan's averaging 33 and a half minutes, 50% from 2, 57% from 3. His free throw percentage is up around 90, 7 rebounds a game, 4 assists a game, a block a game, including, that game at UCF where they block it, 2.7 steals a game. And he's also averaging 18 points a game. That's his 3 road games this season. Absolutely impressive. Now, his overall, we put that up earlier, is 16.3, but he's actually performing better on the road. And before anybody looks at it, for true road games this year, they played at Thompson Boling Arena against the top 5 team, against UCF in their building, and they beat Kansas. So it's a good basketball team as well. And then they had the win at Temple. Those are the 3 true road games that Ole Miss has gone through. This is a big week for Ole Miss basketball. This is a big week for their net. This is a big week for their NCAA tournament, not because it's a do or die. This is an opportunity week. It's not a negative week. If you drop a game on a road at Neville Arena in Auburn, that's not going to count against you. And there's nobody going to hold that against you. But if Ole Miss can win both of these games, and at the end of this week, be looking at 4-1 going into Arkansas as a home game, who's struggling, who's kind of scuffling right now, it could all line up for Ole Miss. But Ole Miss just needs to go out and put a good performance together against LSU and Auburn. That's what I want. I want Ole Miss to beat LSU by, it can be 1 point. That's the way I feel about it. It can be 1 point. And they need to perform at a higher level than they did against the Tennessee Volunteers. Auburn's a good team, and they're potentially playing better than any other team in the Southeastern Conference right now. And Ole Miss is ranked again, I think 21 in one poll, 22 in the other, but they're finally ranked again. Let's build on that. Let's start moving closer, because if Ole Miss wins both of these weeks, they're going to shoot up the polls. Because if they get out of this 17-1 with Arkansas coming into town, that's going to be pretty nuts stuff. I'm pretty fired up about the Chris Beard era. I wish I can say that I was surprised, but this is kind of going how I thought it would go. Now, everybody that watches this show knows how I do. In my opinion, there's 2 types of shows that you see that does what I do. There's one that banks on anxiety of their guests and their watchers, and there's others that build off their hope. And those 2 type of shows, and I'm one of the build off the hope of what's going on. So I'm always thinking that they have the potential to do that, and you get the benefit of the doubt until you prove otherwise. That's just the way I work. And Ole Miss basketball right now is kind of getting the benefit of the doubt. And honestly, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day as we continue to turn our attention to the portal and SEC hoops as the ranked Rebs have a huge week this week against LSU and Auburn. For your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.